المحاضرة الثانية إن شاء الله النهاردة للدكتورة سحر سليم أستاذ الأشعة في القصر العيني عن selecting a journal for publication tips and tricks. دكتورة سحر الحقيقة اعتذرت لظرف طارئ لكن هي مسجلة المحاضرة معانا. ممكن أستاذ إبراهيم تفضل تعرض المحاضرة. أستاذ إبراهيم. ماشي.
يعني هو لو في تكنيكال بروبلم انا ممكن ابتدي يا دكتور هشام قبل ما الاستاذ ابراهيم يظبط الموضوع. ما انا فاهم انا قصدي.
إبراهيم إيه يا أستاذ إبراهيم؟ نعم. طيب اتفضل اتفضل يا دكتور هيثم.
اوكي حاضر لحظة. تمام كده؟ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا دكتور هشام على your kind invitation for this conference and for this meeting, and congratulations for the successful meeting. Today I will discuss important skill for every researcher should be acquired: how to write a research article, especially a Q1 research article. Our objective today is to summarize the perfect writing, the steps to provide you an approach for writing, how to think in the writing process, and give you general idea about the formal structure of the research manuscript. And finally, I will give you a tips for each section. A Q1 article actually is an outcome for two main components. The first component, you should have an innovative idea, and the second component, you should have a perfect writing. So it's a balanced equation between a novel idea and perfect writing. If you have a good idea or novel idea without perfect writing, without expression of your idea, so you will probably fail to publish in Q1 journal. So it's very important to have the both elements to publish a Q1 article. I will focus for the second R, perfect writing. But before the actual process of writing, if you have got an idea, so what you will do? The first step is to reviewing the literature to know about your idea, the position of your idea. Is it a really novel idea? Is it a recent idea? What's the degree of the similarity between your idea and the previous published articles? If there is a new modification, are you using a larger sample size? You should provide a new point, a new piece of point of information to be aided in the scientific community, to be accepted from the editor to publish in your journal. After reviewing the literature, you should establish your hypothesis. You should establish your research question, the aim of the work, and should be a novel, should be there is a piece of novelty, at least a piece of novelty. After that, you should select the appropriate study design, and this necessitates to know the different types of study design. And this is a very important point, because most of reasons of rejection, from my experience, you don't select the appropriate study design and you have a wrong statistical analysis and result analysis. So please be careful about this point. After study design established, so you will collect your data and you will analyze these data. And finally, you will get the results. After getting the results, so from here, you will start to the actual process of writing. All of us know that the actual process or the formal order of the article, including from the title to the references. However, the actual writing process, not like that. It means that I will not start with the title, then abstract, then introduction, and so on. No. But the first step to write, or in the first section to write, usually is the results and the statistical section. Why? Because writing the results will give you a precise idea about the positive correlation between your variables, negative correlation of your variables, the strengths of your manuscript, and the weakness. So you can select and you can identify your research question. And after finishing the result, you can write down your aim of the work, your research question, and make it in a short and succinct statement. After results section, you will start with the next one is material and methods. And material and the method simply, it's easy in writing because you already know what you did, but you can make more emphasization and clarification for a special step and a special technique based on your results. If you got a novel results, a piece of result, you will determine the novelty of your result section. So the material and the method, it's recommended to be the second section in writing. Some authors prefer to be right in the first, but many authors and me, I prefer to write it in the second after result section. Then you will write the introduction. Why you think about this idea? Why you did what you did? This is the concept of the introduction. You have a problem, there is a defect in the literature, there is a defect in the this technique, there is a defect in the management, so your article is supposed to be modify or treat this defect or partially improve this technique, so you should have a reason for thinking about this idea. Discussion, what it means. The discussion, it means that what's your results mean for the scientific community. It has a clinical implication or not for the patient and for the patient management, for a new technique. What's the benefit you will provide to the scientific community? You will translate all what you did, the result section, method section, in the discussion section. And you will compare your results with the other researcher. And you will agree and disagree with them, and you will clarify why you agree and why disagree. Then the abstract, which will summarize all your sections, and then you can think in a suitable and attraction and succinct title, which make attraction for the readers and the reviewers and editors. And of course, the references will included mainly in the introduction and discussion section. So I will give you a tips for each section, and be careful about the first statistical section. Statistical and result section is a key concept for any paper, and one of the major reason of rejection. And that is why, that is because especially in Egypt, the researcher doesn't continue to know any statistical concept. There are some basic statistical knowledge, and the concept should be known from the researcher. It's not a fun or optional, okay? So in the statistical section, you should describe your variables and its types and the groups, your groups, the number of groups, and what's your plan for comparison, and select the appropriate test for comparison. The major, as I told you, the major reason for rejection as a reviewer I have made lies in the two positions of the paper: selection of inappropriate study design and inappropriate statistical analysis. Also, you state the level of confidence. You should mention the p-value and what's the significance of confidence, and finally report the applied statistical software. I will give you an example for bad and good statistical section writing. You can hear the authors mention the name of the software. It's good. However, it's usually mentioned in the last sentence of this section. And if you read in details this paragraph, which describes their plan of analysis, you will not find any plan of analysis. They talk generally speaking. They didn't mention any variables of their study. There is no any variables we can know. And they mention two types of tests. And interestingly, you will find that if you look to the two arrows, this is independent t-test analysis was carried out to compare the means of normally distributed dichotomous data. This means that they have a dichotomous data and they use independent t-test analysis. And this is a very major mistake, because this type of test couldn't be used to test this type of data. And this is why I'm telling you, you should know the key concepts of statistics. You should know what's the type of the data. You should know what's the suitable statistical analysis should be used. So says, before I finish the paper, I have a decision to reject. So please notify for this important item. You should mention the value. So if we take another example, for comparison, you will find here, this is a good example. Here, the authors mentioned the group of comparison, obstructed and the contralateral unobstructed kidneys. That's good. They mentioned specific variables, diffraction perfusion, ADC total, ADCD. So they mentioned their variables and its types. Also, they used a suitable and the correct statistical tests, well-consigned rank tests. So this is a perfect writing or a model for a good writing of statistical analysis. Also, they mentioned the standard reference of the p-value, and in the last thing they mentioned the software, its name and its company. So this is a model for a good writing of statistical analysis. So please be notes about this. Regarding results section, if you have a long results section, you can categorize it. You can make a subheadings. This is because it will be easy for the reviewers and editors. You should reflect what you have mentioned in the statistical section. And this is a common reason for rejection, because many authors write a lot of statistical tests and actual done is only 1 or 2 of statistical analysis. So you should mention what you will do in the statistical section only. Also, you should mention the relevant results to your research question. Don't forget the research question. And that is why we should write down the research question after you finishing the result section. Please avoid these points. Don't use some vague words. We are in scientific writing. We need a scientific expression and scientific calculation. Don't write most, some, probably, but just report. If you have a percentage, you write the percentage. If I have 70% of, you write 70%, not write most, okay? If you have p-value significant, write the value of this significance. If you have p-value not significant, write the value of this insignificant. So be careful about this. Also, including text, tables, and the graph, you should be careful about the redundancy process, because many authors write the content of the text and repeat it in the tables. This is not correct. Remember that each table and figure should provide a new information. So you can summarize the content. You can highlight within the text the major content, then include all the details in the tables and refer in the writing, see table 1 or table 2 and so on. So each table and figure should provide a new piece of information. So what about material and methods? Material and methods, they be described as what you did. It's described as a cookbook. A cookbook. It means that every details you did, you should be mentioned. Because if I am a researcher reading in USA or in Australia or in Canada, if I repeat your steps, should be repeated and could be obtained and a similar results. This is an example for this. If you have a long and known methods, you can make it as categorization and subsections, and you can provide a reference instead of writing, because some journals, and actually most of the journals, will limit your words by 2,000 words or 2,005, 3,000. So you need sometimes to don't be exhaust and use a lot of words. In the method section, you should provide the ethical consideration. If you take the IRP, if you take the patient consent or you waived it, you should mention the type of study design, and remember, it should be appropriate study design. Demographic data of the patients, okay, the age, patient age, the sex, the range, and so on. You can use a reference for a common previously published method If it is uncommon, you can give a short summary and give reference. This will shortcut the number of words used in the article and help you to be follow the guideline of the journal. This is an example of a Q1 article and method section. You can see patients here, the local ethical start with the approval, with the ethical consideration, then start with the demographic data of the patient, and it has a long method section, so it categorized into subheadings: MR imaging, image analysis, and each section has subdivision. MR imaging, including morphological evaluation, function evaluation, image analysis also, morphologic analysis and functional analysis, and so on. So you can categorize to be more understandable. Also, if you have a long study design, you can make a diagram. A diagram like that, including the exclusion criteria and inclusion criteria. So diagram could be readable and understandable more than the text. So after that, we'll go to introduction section. Introduction section should contain 3 sections. First, you should provide a short review of the literature about the research question, about the problem. Then you will provide the originality of your study. It means the need for the study. What's the effect in the literature which stimulates you to think about this idea? And finally, at the end of the introduction, you should end with a 2 or maximum 2 lines or 2 statements and a strong statement about research question, about aim of the work, and should be a novel. So if we talk about this part, the need for the study, need of this study, you should provide a short and pertinent overview of the current problem and address the clinical condition. Then highlight the shortcomings of the previous studies or current technique. Then try to confess and try to show your evidence for the reviewers. Your paper is the logical next step for the previous article. Also, be proved that and improve for the reviewers, your article will broaden the scientific horizon for this point. Then come to the discussion section. The discussion section and the introduction sections need a professional writing, including perfect grammar, perfect language, using expression. But I'm giving you the basic. Introduction should cover this previous 3 sections, and discussion should be started like that. In the first paragraph, you should highlight the most relevant of your results. You can say that our results show it that. You can say that our study highlight the following points, something like that. Second, interpretation of your own results, what your results means. It doesn't what means. You need to be more simply explain the results means. Your technique is best from other techniques. It's provide a new piece of information, provide improvement of the technique, provide improvement of the patient management and diagnosis. This is the mean of your results. After that, you compare your results in the context of previous results. And this is, if you remember that I am telling you, you should review the literature when you get an idea, because you will take the benefit of this reviewing literature, will support you by the introduction material, and will support you by the discussion material to compare your idea and the results with the previous studies. And you should emphasize why your results agreed with these authors and why you are disagree with the other authors. And you should explain the reasons for this. Are you using a larger sample size so your results are more accurate, or use a new approach, or modified their approach, or use new technique? You should explain why your results differed from the others. Then Try to emphasize the clinical implication of your results on the patient outcome or the technique outcome. You can modify the technique, you shorten the time, you give best result resolution, the inter-observer variability is low, and so on. You should give the significance. What's the novelty of your results and your article provide in this point? Finally, you should mention the limitations. The limitations, it's very important, and we'll discuss in the next slide, and then summary and conclusion for future directions. I will come to the limitations because it's important. Clearly state the limitations of your study. You may start a novel idea with a pilot study, initial experience, and the limitation here in this situation, small sample size. So you should be mentioned, this is a limitation. But in this few sample size, I found new sign, I found new result. So, however, it's need more validation by a larger sample size. This is a limitation. Also, description of limitation will strengthen your manuscript, because some of the authors think that the description of the limitation weakness the study. Of course, in contrary, description will strengthen your manuscript because you give an idea about your mind for the reviewer. He knows a limitation of their study, and he recommends the future studies to overcome his limitation. Description of all reasonable limitations demonstrate that you are objective and unbiased. Also, succinct description of the future studies can demonstrate to the reviewer that you have thought carefully about the next step. So all these, the advantages of mention the limitations. Also summarize, in summary and conclusion, summarize the most relevant finding of the study in the last subsection. It shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 sentences. And one sentence should state the main conclusion, which should be the same as the conclusion of the abstract. And of course, the conclusion should be correlated with your results. Should you support it by the data, with your data analysis. The references, it should be updated references, should be provide only the most relevant references. And please avoid the self-citation. The self-citation as possible. It's not allowed to take more than 1 or 2 self-citation and should be within the subject. Okay, this is very important because this is indicates that you are biased for this. Okay, citing recent references and be sure to follow the guideline of each journal, because there are different types of writing of the references and each journal has its own style. So follow the guideline, read the guidelines before the submission. So the abstract is summarizing. Be careful about the writing of the abstract, because the abstract will give the reviewers and the editors of the journal, and even for acceptance of a conference or something like that, it will give the first impression for acceptance or rejection. So be careful for writing the abstract. So the abstract is a brief summary of your manuscript. You should mention the purpose of the abstract in a clear statement, and a statement should be at the end of the introduction, as I have mentioned. It's important. You should support the most relevant results in the result section. You must support a conclusion, a succinct conclusion, which is very important, which is ended in the discussion section. Regarding the title, it should be succinct, direct, and a strong title. And it's preferably to write the title after finishing the paper. We can change the title many times through the writing of the manuscript. After finishing, you can establish a good title. In the title, try to catch the attention of the potential readers. And note that use common words, not uncommon words, because the search engine can identify the common words. Finally, after you publish an article, you need to be this article to be read from the other researchers and to be cited, to make a citation. And the way for this is the title, mostly of the title and abstract. So the title should use a common words, as strong and short as you can, and at the same time representative for the content of the article. I will give you some tips. If you have a special patient population, if you write that this is a special focus for Egyptian population. For example, if you are make a research about COVID in Egyptian population, okay, that is good. You can write in the title Egyptian population, or a special feature for Egyptian population. If you use animal model, this should be written in the title. This means experimental study, and this is one of the high-ranked study design. The disease of interest, because in the search engine, when I'd like to search what about the updated research and recent research about this topic, I will try by the name of the disease. So if you can write the disease name in the title, you will do. Imaging technique, especially, this is very important for us as radiologists, especially when using a new technique like pulse sequences, special type of diffusion sequences, ASL arterial spin labeling. So this is very important to mention in the title. Study design, if it is appropriate, and two, combination with colon. What's mean by that? I will give you an example. Two, combination with the colon. If you look at this title, this is a non-invasive assessment. Non-invasive assessment of acute urethral obstruction with diffusion weighted MR imaging. This is semicolon, and then mention the type of the study, a prospective study. If you write this is a good, you emphasize the type of the study design, a prospective study. Also, you mention, they mention the disease of interest, acute urethral obstruction. They mention the use technique and the modality, MR imaging and the diffusion, and they make a non-invasive assessment. This is a catchy title because it's non-invasive technique. So it's very important to tailor your title with these elements. So these are the you can say principles of the tips of perfect writing, but it needs more details and more details. But based on our time, we can say these are the most important and the most approach. So finally, please remember to start the writing with the result section and the statistical section. Please try to work on yourselves to know the basic concept of statistics and to know what's the appropriate test. You know the different types of study design and how can you select it. Discussion and introduction section need a perfect writing and perfect grammar use. Finally, I'd like to thank you and any questions. Thank you.
هنجمع لو في أسئلة يعني تبقى في نهاية السيشن إن شاء الله.